Thought she was doing a tray.
Okay, so Mrs. Fuller, you and Mr. Stager are running point on this. You guys want to get started? Looks like we've got about five students who were, I guess, eager to join us because they were here right on time. So if other people are going to be joining us over the next few minutes, we'll let them in. But we can get started. Yes.
Great. Oh, do you have to admit them one by one,
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Rizzo?
Okay, I got
Are
it.
you going to do that?
Yep, I've got it.
Okay. Well, I can't see everyone who's here, but can you, Mr. Sager? Do you want to?
No, all I've got is Irwin Tiff.
It's okay because none of them have their cameras turned on, which is
Okay.
perfectly fine.
Okay, perfect.
So I'm assuming then we'll forego any lame attempt at like introduce yourself and tell us something about your college search.
Exactly.
Breeze through that part. All right. So Fab Five that are engaging in this, we want this to be as interactive as possible. Not so much just us talking at you as you ignore us to read what's on the screen anyway. So if you have questions at any point, especially as we're talking about a topic, if you have a question that is specific to that topic, just let us know, jump in. We've got eyes on the chat section, so throw something in there. Or honestly, you can unmute if you want. It'll be nice to hear someone's voice other than mine. So if you want to do that too, either of those work. But anytime you got a question, throw it in. That's kind of what we're hoping for here. So we can make this a little more tailored to you guys. Sound good? I'll pretend I can see all of your thumbs up.
Sounds great.
All right. So this is just a little bit of a list of the things that we're going to go over. Housekeeping items is just some info and some dates for you. We want to give you a little bit of an idea how to do your college search, how to visit in person and remotely, the fun of standardized testing during a pandemic, which honestly should be a lot less stressful than usual. So hopefully you guys are aware of that, and if not, are appreciating it now that you know that. And then just some of the timeline so that you guys have an idea of when to do certain things. There are certain parts of it that are set in stone, but then there are others that are not so much. So being here right now, you are not appreciably behind. You are not, in the danger zone. You can have thought zero about college up to now, and you're still in good shape. We can get you rolling. You're just going to have to do some thinking and some talking to people and putting some time in moving forward, but it shouldn't be overwhelming in any way. All right, keeping house. So we will not do anything in terms of sending transcripts, sending rec letters, anything corresponding with a college for you unless we meet with you. In a normal year, that would be in person, but this year we'll do in person. We can do Zoom, Google Meet, or we'll even do the phone. Email does not count for that. We want to have more like live interaction so that we can make sure everything is good. We like to make sure that we're on the same page as you. We know what you want. We want to make sure that you have done everything that you needed to do, and then just we're both kind of at ease, and then we can know how to move forward. So if you leave this Zoom call and you know everything you want and everything goes perfectly smoothly, then you don't have to meet with us until that last time when you're ready to have things sent. But if you need us occasionally, frequently, not a problem. You can use our email for some things if you have a quick question that isn't an immediate need. Like if you need to know an answer right away, don't email. But if you need some information and you can take a day or two, great, shoot us an email. We'll have kids who come down 6, 7, 8 times in the course of a year, and we'll have kids who come down barely that once. Like we have to go find them. So whatever works for you works for us, as long as you're aware of your timelines and what you need to be doing. Your transcripts are almost finalized. We've looked at them so much, I think we have some of them memorized, but we want to make sure there's no mistakes. Everything is good. Those will be uploaded into Naviance in 5 days. and they should be spotless by then. Well, spotless in any mistakes, not maybe in terms of your academic record, but that's more on you than us. Financial aid night is going to be virtual, so you can sit with mom and dad in your house and just kind of watch. We'd recommend that you're involved, and we recommend that you have a parent there to check this out, because some of the stuff is going to be more geared toward them, but it's also stuff that you need to know. You can check your Schoology and all the other ways that we throw info at you to find out exactly when that's going to be, but that's a good thing to check out. The FAFSA, notice it is FAFSA, not FAFSA. That is one of my pet peeves. Pronounce it right. It becomes available on the 1st of October. So that means you can actually start the financial aid paperwork on October 1st. They made it a lot easier a couple years ago. They opened it earlier. You can use the prior year's tax stuff. Everything's become a lot easier to do. Again, ideally, I would say you want mom or dad involved with the FAFSA. That's kind of important stuff. And there might even be some info there that they'd rather you didn't know. So work with mom and dad to make sure that you guys can get that done. Earlier the better. You don't have to do it right October 1st or even in October, but you don't want that to be a thing that you forget and then you realize you have to do it in spring too much later than you'd like to. And just check Schoology all the time. Rizzo's always dinging you with the notifications. We try not to send out stuff that isn't useful. So if it comes up from guidance, at least check it out, see what we got for you.
It's not working. Hold on. There we go.
Whatever, broke it. Ooh. All right. So this process can range on the stress spectrum from kids not really caring or putting much effort into it to kids on the borderline of having breakdowns regularly. There's definitely some stress involved. You're basically trying to pick your home for the next 4 or 5 years. And it is an important decision and series of decisions, but I like to look at it as like your chance to pick a school. You get to hand out the roses here. So if there's going to be multiple schools that want you, you get to decide which one to go to. To me, that's a pretty cool opportunity. And I think it works better if you look at it that way and less look at it, oh my God, who's going to accept me? There are going to be schools that accept you. It's just a matter of trying to find the best fit for you. There won't be a perfect school, but there will be schools that fit you and you'll just have to decide from there. The small steps there, that's a great idea. Like you want to do it a little bit at a time. Don't look at it as the whole thing and even the different parts of it. If you end up having to fill out the Common App, don't look at the Common App all as one thing and something you have to do in one sitting. Break it, look at it ahead of time, break it down, do things piece by piece, do them over a consistent period of time, and you'll be done before you know it, and you'll be a lot less stressed out. The biggest thing is to just keep your perspective. You should also, more than anyone else, more than us, you should be talking to your parents. They know you better than anyone. They can help you if you're trying to figure certain things out. They also decide some important things for you. If money is part of this conversation, you need to ask them how that impacts your college search and the reality of what you'll be able to do. Some parents also have limits on how far they want you to go, different things like that. So make sure that you are working with them throughout this so that in the springtime, when you are deciding on a college and you're excited to pick the one you want, that's not the point at which you find out mom and dad don't want you going out of state. You need to know that stuff ahead of time. And the earlier you find out anything that you might disagree with mom and dad about, the longer you have to work that out. That's what I say. If I think parents are listening, if parents aren't listening, I say the longer you have to manipulate them and get them on your side. So whichever way you want to look at that, you want that time to get that done. And that to me is the first thing you do. So the number one thing you do to start this is sit down with mom and dad, ask them what their thoughts are, make sure they know what you want, and then that lets you kind of map out where you want to go from there.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
I don't know why it won't let me do it on the first try. Sorry.
What did you do? All right. Perspective 46. So one thing we hear a lot from kids is, because everybody talks about some of the higher end schools that are extremely hard to get into, kids have this misperception that it's very difficult to get into college. it is very difficult to get into certain colleges, to the point that no one has a good chance of getting into Harvard or Yale. But the vast majority of colleges are accepting the majority of students. So out of more than 2,500 schools, there are 46 that accept 20% or fewer of applicants. Most of them accept at least half, and community colleges accept everyone. So that's why we say there is a school or multiple schools that will accept you. And if you have a higher end goal that's maybe out of reach a little bit because maybe you matured academically late or something else happened that got in the way, there are ways to get yourself to that end goal through community college, through transfers, through different things like that. So you have to decide what that end goal is for you. And if it's not realistic immediately, that doesn't mean it's not realistic down the road. That last bullet point there, that colleges need students, has never been more true than it is now. Colleges got hammered in the spring and are getting hammered on this pandemic like everyone else. They need money. And when you go there, you're going to pay your tuition, and they need that more than ever. So that theoretically should be to your benefit. It wouldn't be surprising if schools end up accepting some students that they might not have accepted in a normal year because they need to make sure that they can keep running and that they can stay in the black. So in a weird way, the pandemic could be helpful in this situation. We titled this matchmaking, just kind of stick with the Bachelor theme. Let's see. All right, this is actually a really good analogy. It's a Rizzo analogy. The college gets romanticized. So college isn't necessarily where you find your college soulmate. There are a lot of different colleges that can fit you. There's not just one that's perfect for you. Every one of us counselors can think of kids who thought that they had their dream school and everything was perfect, and then ended up moving on and going elsewhere. That's perfectly normal. There's no way to really know how a college is going to work for you until you're actually going there. So you put in the work, you do your best to make that decision the best you can, and then you kind of see how it plays out. So don't have that mindset that there's only one school for you. It's just completely not true. The most important thing in picking a school is the fit. It's broken down here into these three different areas. Financial fit, again, is a conversation to have with your parents. The academic fit is important, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you go to the best college that you can get into. It means that you go to the one that fits your needs. If you need smaller class sizes, if you want more support, if you want to get lost in an auditorium with 400 kids in it, or a Zoom call with 400 kids in it, whatever works for you is what you need to be looking for. Same with social fit. That can be size of the school. That can be, do they have major sports that you want to be a part of? Do they have more diversity on campus than Clarence does? That can even mean more specific things. Are there certain passions you have that you want to make sure are represented on campus through clubs or some other kind of group? So you want to be at a campus that you feel like nurtures everything about you, not just the academic part, because you're only in class a small percentage of the time that you're at college. And you want to make sure that the rest of that time fits what you need so you can be at your best academically. Hopefully that makes sense. I'll look at the counselors nodding heads to make sure that they, anybody question, concern, thought? Ms. Fuller, do we have anyone left on the call?
I think they all stayed.
Fantastic. At least we think anyway. Next.
Oh, I didn't know if you were gonna, okay.
Feel free to jump in. What do you got, Fuller?
No, nothing. There was the financial piece, but I think you talked about it earlier, so.
Oh, good. You're zoning out as I talk. That's not a good sign. All right. So the first real step you can take toward this whole process is to get yourself a list. There are no black and white parameters for the list. It does not have to be a certain number of schools. They do not have to fit certain criteria. Some kids have a list, and that list is UB. As long as they're as close as you can guarantee to getting in there and they can afford it and they want to go there, that works. Some kids apply to insane numbers of schools. Their lists go on and on for page after page. To me, that seems exhausting, but you have that right to do that if that's the way that you want to go. So if right now you don't have anything set up and you're not sure about any of this, the search is where you're going to start. You're going to think about the things that matter to you in a school, the major, the size, the location, heck, the school colors, whatever it is that can get you started, and you're going to build from there. Naviance has a great search option that I think, Ms. Fuller, we're going to look at that in a minute, right?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
Then there's two others there, College Board, College Scorecard. I mean, you can really use whichever one you'd like. We kind of push Naviance because you have to use Naviance anyway for the college application process, and because we think it's pretty good. But if you want to mess around with a different one, go right ahead. You want to look at academic stuff with any school. I mean, like anything else, they're going to do the best they can to massage those numbers, but they do give you an idea of how many freshmen stay there for their sophomore year and how many kids graduate in a relatively normal time frame. You can look at information about what graduates do. If your goal is grad school, what percentage of kids get accepted to grad school, or maybe specifically med school or law school. It might be what percentage of kids get a job in the area that they studied. I mean, all that stuff is available through the schools. So that could be something that drives your search process. Again, though, it could be less sort of that academic stuff than it is socially and just kind of your overall happiness. Maybe you want a campus that looks a certain way, a campus that has a bunch of green space and certain type of student. Great. Whatever that is for you, you have to decide that first and then move from there. As much info as you can get on a school is going to help you a lot. You'll see the link for the template we have on, what is it, on Google Drive?
It's in their Schoology.
Your Schoology, okay. We have a bunch of templates for your search process and gathering information that were put together by Mr. Rizzo that can be really helpful for you. They might look a little intimidating now, but they help you kind of organize things and make it less intimidating as you go on. Do you want to pull that up quick?
Yeah, it's right here.
All right. So it just gives you kind of an organization of kind of the makeup of each college and what you like about them, what you maybe don't like about them, so you can compare kind of college to college and have that all in one place. Then further down the line, there's a template on there for when you make visits and kind of keeping notes and keeping track of things, because if you start to look at a decent number of schools and do a handful of visits, it does kind of blend together. There's a lot in common between a lot of different schools, and you want to be able to keep them separate so you can remember what you liked about certain schools or what you liked more or less about one school versus another. So you certainly don't have to use the templates and the different things that we've provided, but we think they could potentially help you out. But if you are an organization freak and like to do it your own way, or you're going to fly by the seat of your pants and, you know, see which school the dart sticks to, that works too. Just make sure you do what works for you.
Mr. Staker, I know we're going to talk more about the visits, but with obviously the pandemic, things have shifted with that. But you can still get a lot by just driving to a campus and driving around and looking and seeing the setting and where is it near and where is it not near. And then we're also going to have a lot of virtual visits with college reps that are going to be talked about later, I think.
Indeed. That's a good point, though, about driving around too. So even if you can't go there and interact with people, and each school is going to have kind of their own policies about that, so you'll have to reach out to individual admissions offices. So if you can't go there and meet and talk to kids and do that, you can still go there, see the campus, get an idea for the feel. It's hard to pick a school without actually having been on the campus. You don't necessarily need to do that in the fall. You can apply to schools you haven't visited, but my thought is always, before you commit to a school and decide to go there, you should probably set foot on campus. I mean, generally, you're not going to, buy a car without having sat in it first. We used to make the analogy that you're not going to date someone that you haven't met, but since 2/3 of you now have internet boyfriends and girlfriends, that one's out the window. So, yeah. let's see, where are we on the search? Oh, we're right clicking. What are we right clicking? Talk to anyone that you know that you trust about your college search and about their experience. Friends, teachers, any friends, siblings, relatives a year or two older who recently went through this. If there's a school you're interested in, you know, maybe a teacher or an uncle went there, have that conversation. If you like Geneseo and you have 2 to 3 hours to kill, Mr. Rizzo will happily tell you everything you could possibly want to know about Geneseo. And he'll probably show you a picture or two also, so get ready for that. But it's important to find out the different experiences that people had, but also keep them in perspective. Just because they had a great time or did not doesn't necessarily mean you will. So try to kind of get some more detail about it rather than just that generic information. School course catalogs are big. If you know what you want to study, it might not be a bad idea to look at what that major is made up of class-wise at each different school. If you want to be a basket weaver when you leave college, it might be important to know that why the heck is organic chemistry in the basket weaving, what's the word I'm looking for, curriculum for a certain school. You want to know what you need and what you're up against. That's definitely important. And maybe you're a kid who's looking at double major or a minor, or you want to take advantage of college to look at other things that you're not majoring in that you could have interest in. You can dig into those online college catalogs and get a real good idea for all of that stuff. All right, so let's talk. Are the visits up next, Jen?
Yep.
All right. The last bullet from the previous one that I should mention, though, is, again, your list depends on you. I mean, I would say a generic is kind of in that 4 to 6 range. So you have more than 1 or 2 options, but not so many that it's overwhelming. You definitely want to have one school on there that you can be confident you'll get into academically, you know that you can afford, and that you would actually go to. We always have kids who apply to 15 schools, and there's 8 or 9 on there that they would never go to. Don't waste your time with that. Make sure that you have a school that if everything else falls apart, you would go to it. For some kids, it's a local one like Buff State or UB. Those can also be harder to get into than some kids think. So it might even be a 2-year school, ECC or M-Trip. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but realize that for some kids, that is definitely a possibility. So the number of schools kind of depends on your comfort level. Yay, all right, the visits. So keep in mind that, especially now with a virtual visit, but even if you do have the opportunity to go to campus, schools are trying to sell you on their school. So go where they want you to go, talk to who they want you to talk to, do all of that, take your notes, kind of form your impressions, but also ask to talk to someone maybe who's not on the tour. If you know you want to go into the physics department at a certain school, great. Email ahead and say, hey, we're coming to visit. We'd like to talk to somebody in the physics department, a professor, maybe a kid or two. Make sure that you get a chance to look at the science buildings on campus if they don't take you there. So make sure that your needs and your interests are met when you visit a school in person. If you're doing it in person, reach out to the admissions department. First off, again, you should probably ask what their policy is on visits. If they allow them, set one up and do it formally if you can. You can do informal. But again, you don't want to plan an informal visit like on a random Saturday and then get there and find out that they're not allowing anyone on campus. So make sure you kind of do your due diligence ahead of time, figure that out. The virtual visits have been growing for probably 10 years now. And some kids just use those prior to the pandemic because they really can do some wild stuff on those. But now they've taken it up obviously another notch because so many people are uncomfortable traveling. So you will see a lot on a virtual tour. A lot of schools will have different versions of them. They will have you give you the access to check out the different places as opposed to just one virtual tour that only does the certain things that they want you to. They're really catering to that. So make sure you let them know. If you look at a virtual visit and it really isn't what you're looking for, don't be afraid to reach out and say to them, hey, here are a couple of things I'm interested in. How can we make that work for me virtually too? as much as, again, you look at this process as which school is going to take me, you're a customer and they're going to be lucky to have you. So don't be afraid to ask for what you need and to ask for what you want. Go there to the virtual or the in-person with questions, with ideas of what you want. Ask questions. Generally speaking, they like that. They want to see that you're interested. They want to know that you're engaged. If you go to a visit and you don't say a word and you just nod your head whenever they ask you something, that gives them the impression that you don't really care about their school. If you're interested in the school, show that interest. That can really help. As much as that might seem weird, that's the kind of thing that the admissions people pay attention to. They call it demonstrated interest. So if they know that you're interested in their school, they're probably more likely to accept you because they want to accept people who want to go to their school. So show that when you're there, take notes, ask questions, don't be afraid to follow up. Generally speaking, you're going to have an admissions person at each school that does our area. That's the person you're going to do a lot of your back and forth with. You can email them, and hopefully you'll get a chance to meet them either virtually or when you go visit. They will also be coming to us virtually. No one's allowed in the building for college visits anymore, but if you check on Naviance, there's a list of schools that have virtual visits set up. So you can meet with them virtually and basically have the same experience that kids have when they sit in the tables in guidance, just on the virtual level, which gives you really access to more if you're interested in that. So keep an eye on that through Naviance and take advantage of those as much as you can. That again is kind of that first interaction with the admissions person, and that can be very valuable. No questions, concerns, thoughts, suggestions? No? All right, am I projecting? Can we all hear me? All right. We could switch it to Mrs. Schaefer and she can just sing the whole thing. That would be much more entertaining, I think. But all right, standardized testing. Major source of stress for a lot of kids that you should be so much less stressed about. If you have taken standardized tests, great, but you're going to have a lot more option in terms of whether or not you want to use that. We don't want to say that every school is test optional this year because we can't really say that for sure, but the vast majority are going to be. There are just different parts of the country where kids have not had the ability to test. There are some where it's been more widespread that they can test, but the point is, whether you have taken one or not is not going to impact your ability to apply to almost any school. Again, this is individual to school, so you probably want to know what each individual school is looking for. You don't want to be 80% of the way into the application process and find out that you needed an SAT score for the school that is your number one school. At that point, there's probably not going to be anything you can do. So make sure that you find that information out and then move forward from there. The one, maybe two downsides to this. One is if you have not really pushed yourself in school and your transcript is not what it could be, you no longer have that SAT or ACT to potentially boost up that transcript. So if you're one of those kids, you're looking at the essay and your rec letters, hopefully, as your chance to maybe make yourself look a little bit better. So that's kind of off the table. The second thing is, while schools might be test optional for admissions, they might require a test score for merit-based aid. So merit-based aid is basically scholarship money you get for your grades. Some schools are still going to require that just to figure out where you fall on their list and how much money to hand out. So that's another question you want to ask. If their admissions are test optional, it does not mean financial aid is. So find that out, and then you can use that to determine if you want to try to reach out to Williamsville or somewhere else and get an SAT in, or if we eventually are having them. But don't count on that. You're better off to look elsewhere if you can. So find that information out and go from there. But again, stress way down for that. Much less important. That last bullet, super scoring, just means if you've taken multiple SATs or ACTs, most schools will combine your best scores into one super score. And when you do eventually apply, if you have test scores, you have to get them sent straight from the testing facility, either ACT or College Board, and you also have to pay for that. We, as your counselors in the school, cannot send test scores. They won't accept them from us, because if they did, then no one would be making money off of it. So just be aware of that too. Next.
Oh, hold on one second, Mr.
Yeah.
Stager. Should they wait to submit applications until after their scores come in?
Oh, definitely not. Do your application on your time frame, but if you're ready to apply and your scores are not in, don't worry about that. There's multiple ways, but basically when you fill out an application, it asks for the administrations you've taken. So if you're taking an ACT or an SAT, say in December somewhere, you put that in and then you can have the score sent to the school after your application. That's an excellent question that always throws kids off. Winnie the Pooh. Do you think Winnie the Pooh has tuxedo pants on in the bottom picture? Or is he
No.
going pantless in that one too? Huh. All right, so timeline. Thanksgiving is kind of an ideal. The harder deadline is really Christmas. A lot of schools are done January 1st. That's the latest you can apply. Some schools don't have a deadline. You can apply in June if you want to. Some have that January 1st. There's just different deadlines in there. There are a few schools that have them prior to the end of the year too. So again, another thing you want to know based on your individual school. But Thanksgiving is generally one where you can kind of get everything done and not have to feel overwhelmed, and it gives you enough time to do it without being overwhelmed, and then it's done. So it's not something that's on the back of your mind all the way through to January. Applying early is great, but you're not more likely to get in if you apply in October versus applying in November or December necessarily. We touched on that next one. So, all right, early action, early decision.
Excuse me. What about if someone has an application deadline of October 15th for a certain school? Does this person still have enough time? Will that happen?
I think I saw that was Faith, right? Yeah, Faith, you pain in my. All right, yeah, no, October 15th is definitely enough time, Faith. But you probably want to make an appointment and kind of map things out a little bit so that we can make sure you're good to go. Because when I wrote down the date on the note sheet I have here to take any notes that come up during this, I was once again shocked that it's already the 23rd of September. So October 15th is going to be here quickly. But 3 weeks is definitely enough time. So make an appointment, shoot me an email, or come in, would be Friday for you, and make an appointment as soon as you can, and we'll kind of map things out and go from there. But yeah, definitely enough time. And October 15th generally is going to be the earliest date anyone is going to have. That might be like a PA program, that kind of thing. So that is actually another great point, Faith, off of that. If you're applying to specific programs, PA, PT, different things like that, they might have an earlier deadline than the school does, and they might have different requirements than kind of the general school does. So that again is stuff that you need to make sure that you're finding out specific to what you want to do and specific to the schools that you're applying to. And speaking of earlier deadlines, let's jump into EA and ED. So early action and early decision are options that schools offer. Early action basically means you agree to get everything in by an earlier time frame, say November 15th, and they get you an answer, either an acceptance or a rejection earlier. Maybe it's say mid-December. So it just kind of moves that time frame up so that you can kind of have an answer quicker and plan better. Generally speaking, I mean, it's kind of believed that there's not much of a difference in terms of how that impacts your application. But again, we go back to that demonstrated interest we talked about. If you're applying early action, it does kind of tip off a school that maybe they're a little higher on your list than some other schools, because why else would you be applying early action? So something to think about. If there's a school that maybe you feel like you're kind of on the borderline in terms of what they require, maybe that early action helps them realize that it's a place that you really want to go. But it's definitely school by school, and it's not really anything that any school would like publicize or admit to. ED, on the other hand, is a binding commitment, which means it might be the same as early action. You get it in by November 15th. We get you an answer by December 15th. The difference with early decision is you are committed to go to that school if you get in. Generally, I don't know many 17-year-olds that are able to make a decision about the next 4 years of their lives that far ahead of time. If you are, or if circumstances dictate that there's really one school that fits what you need and you know that and you're happy with that, fantastic. You can do that. Consider the financial part though. So if you apply early decision to a school that you can only afford if you get a lot of money back and you don't get a lot of money, you're still committed to go there. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. Next, unless we have questions, thoughts? Ms. Fuller, are you muted?
No.
No.
You want
All
me?
right. So-
I said, do you want me to be?
So basically our role in this for you guys is to help you along the way. If you need a lot of help, great. If you barely need any, if it's just for me to click some buttons at the end and make sure your stuff gets sent, that's perfectly fine too. So you have to do this. This is your journey. It's not your parents. It's not ours. And actually, I want to make a comment on that. Please don't let mom and dad drive this for you guys. It's your future. It's your life. Like, you want to be as involved in picking what's next for you as you can possibly be, and less influenced by what other people want for you or think is best for you necessarily. And that also applies to us. If you come in and say, what school should I go to? Then I'm probably going to write you a pass to your class and then move on to the next kid waiting for me. I'm happy to help you figure things out and talk through things and maybe kind of bounce back to you what it sounds like you're interested in. But this is a decision that you guys have to make and you have to put in the time for. And I think you'll feel much better about it afterwards. Questions, thoughts? Ms. Fuller, Ms. Schaefer, Mr. Rizzo hiding over there? Anything else that you guys want to add in or correct that I misspoke on?
We want to look at Naviance if some of the kids don't know where to find it, and just kind of show them how to use the search section.
Definitely.
Okay.
Good point. 4 exclamation points for good luck. I feel like that's daunting. Makes it seem like they really need luck. Let's cut that down to 2, Rizzo, for the next time, all right? All right, so Naviance is the website, kind of the portal that you guys and us as your counselors and your teachers all use for your college applications. So you have to actually fill out the college application, which is either Common App, SUNY app, individual school app. There's a bunch of different ones out there. So you have to fill out the application, but then you also have to upload your information into Naviance. The teacher rec letters go into Naviance. Your transcript is in there. Basically what it is a replacement for the mail. So when I started, we used to mail everything to every school, but we no longer do that. Now it's all electronic, but it needs a way to get there, and it needs a way for the schools to kind of control things. So that is what Naviance is. It's basically the electronic version of the mail that we can use to send everything to each school. So if you go to the Clarence webpage, guidance spot, you can click on Naviance and that will take you where you need to go.
Maybe.
Eventually.
There we go. Sometimes you have to put in this. I don't know why.
If you don't know the zip code for Clarence, then maybe college isn't right for you.
So then you log in as student and you're going to continue with the single sign-on.
So correct me if I'm wrong here, Mrs. Fuller, but that means then that you use the sign-on info that you use for everything else, Clarence.
Right.
Correct. Okay.
Right. Now I'm going to go to a different window just because we have a demo one so we can show the kids where stuff is.
Wonderful. All right, so this is the page that you will see when you log in. You can see the different sections there are, but basically you're going to want to know how to search for a school and then how to add schools that you're applying to. Within Naviance, you can do the searching, but you can also organize everything for yourself. There's a lot of different components to this that are actually pretty cool and pretty useful. We don't want to run you through all of them because it can be a little overwhelming and a little much. You can make a resume in here. You can compare schools back and forth, but we just kind of want to show you how to start the basic search concept. And actually, I'm thinking that's probably going to be it at this point, just given where you guys are, if you've chosen to watch this version of our little performance instead of the Rizzo Gardner AP version.
When you are searching for schools, you know, a couple of pieces of information are going to be really important, your rank and GPA. And we're going to have rank official very soon. It's almost there now. Once it is, we're going to upload everyone's transcript to Naviance. It won't be the one we send. It's going to be an unofficial copy, and it's for your use while you're searching. Or if you need to record things for different applications, and that, that'll come later. But you can always find your transcript on the left side there. It's just highlighted in yellow. It's super easy. They're not there now, but they will be very shortly.
When you access that, something about either of those numbers is not what you want them to be, those are done. You can't change your GPA, you can't change your transcript or your rank at this point. So if it's not something that you're proud of or you're happy with, don't let that be something that pulls you down. Move forward and impact what you can impact from now on, okay? That's a big issue we see with some kids. Just, I hate this phrase, but it is what it is. Move on from there and make things more what you want them to be in the future. And don't worry so much about what you can or can't change from the past. Fuller, you want to hit on the search stuff?
Yep.
What?
Come on.
A timeout in minus 19 minutes. That's confusing.
I don't know. Hold on. All right, I'm just gonna have to log into it again, I guess. Sorry. Hold on. Hold tight. I like that. Okay.
All right. One thing you can do on Naviance that I always like to do is, if you're interested in finding some information out about a specific school, Geneseo, UB, Alabama, you can just type in any school name and it will come up with their information, and all the information on Naviance is organized the same. So if you want to know what the average freshman looks like academically at school A versus school B versus school C, it all comes up in the same format. If you try to do that on their school websites, you could be looking for hours for that information. So it's consistent and standardized, and that makes a lot of this a lot easier.
I was just gonna
There you
pull
go.
it up so they could
Cool.
see it. Cool. Or not. Oh,
No. Yay.
yay.
All right, so you can see right at the top, you can click to set up a virtual tour there. You can click to apply. I mean, everything comes through Naviance if you want it to, basically. You don't have to do it that way, but you certainly can. So you see right there, Niagara is considered a good school. It has an 84% acceptance rate. So that kind of illustrates that point earlier about schools want kids. They're not all rejecting 95% of you, nothing like that. Did you want to click on the scattergram, Ms. Fuller?
Yes. Admissions, right?
Right, yeah, right there.
Yeah. There we go.
All right, so this tool we all use a lot. This basically shows you every kid from the last several years who applied to Niagara from Clarence. Green check marks are kids that got in. The red X are kids who did not get in. And the blue circle largely means no one has any idea. So you can look at that and you see all those green check marks, and you got to feel like your chances are pretty good of getting in. There is that weird random red X for a kid who had a 90 average and a 1220. I don't know if that kid applied from prison or wrote something really inappropriate in their essay, but that's really strange. Also wonder if maybe that's a kid who applied so late in the process that they just didn't have the spots open anymore. But you can see where you would fit for a school like Niagara, and you can do this for every school. So it's kind of a nice visual, and it's also quick. Like, it can help you realize real fast, like, all right, I might need to move on from Johns Hopkins because nobody in my area has gotten in to a school like that. So this is something we encourage you guys to use, and it helps give you an idea of where you're at. Obviously, none of this is, set in stone. I mean, you can see that from some of the randomness here, but it does give you a good idea and maybe helps you decide whether to move on with a school or look for a different one.
Do you want to show them the dates? I just always like that so they know what they're looking for.
I always suggest to kids, even when you see the dates on Naviance, you want to double check that
Right.
with admissions or with the school website. To be honest, I haven't seen a time when Naviance has been wrong, but that doesn't matter, because if they are and you send it in late and you say, oh, but Naviance said it was the 15th, not the 1st, it's not going to matter. You need to know through the school. But again, this is a good place to look, and you can see kind of deadline-ish what you're looking at and get an idea for when to have things in. I mean, you can see their regular deadline is August 1st. We definitely don't recommend waiting until summer to apply, but you do have time. So even if you kind of go through the regular process, get everything in by Thanksgiving, and as spring comes, you're not really feeling any of your schools, or you're not sure what you want to do, you can apply to a school like Niagara or Buff State that late in the game and give yourself some more options.
Do you want to look at the advanced search just in case they need help making their list?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hardest part about the search is a lot of times you don't even know where to begin. And this gives you the opportunity to just punch in the things that you want. Like if you want to be local and you want environmental engineering, you can just punch those two things in and it gives you all the schools that fit what you're looking for. So you can see across the top where it says type, location, students, those are just all the different categories. And then below that, like for school type, you see all of the different kind of subcategories. There's something like 60 different things that you have the option to pick from. If you don't know certain things, doesn't matter. You don't have to answer every single one. But some of them are better than others at narrowing things down. Campus surroundings, if you want to be in the middle of a city, that's going to narrow some things down if you know the size of the school you want. So any of those sort of things. So you can just use that as your starting point, or you can use that to expand your list. If you have 2 or 3 schools you want to apply to, but you think you need more than that, then you can type in again the things that you want, and you can play around with some of the different details and change them to see if it adds another school or takes another school away. So this might be the good place to start if you don't know where you want to be and what schools you want to have on your list. I would suggest starting here.
Okay. Are you going to talk about the letters of recommendation piece, just about how to go about starting that process and who they should ask maybe?
A lot of your application is black and white. The color and the gray comes in through your essay and your letters of recommendation. You control the essay, so you can decide what you write in there. The letter of recommendation, you don't control what gets written in there, but you do control who does the writing. So generally speaking, 1 or 2 is all that you need, usually almost entirely not more than 2. So you don't want to ask 7 or 8 teachers to write a rec letter, because after the second one or maybe the third one, they're not going to read anymore. And I do think it also gives off a certain impression to the admissions counselor that maybe you don't want to give off. But you do want to make good decisions in terms of the 1 or 2 people you do ask. Ideally, a teacher from 11th grade. Second choice would be 10th. Only way you want to go with a freshman teacher is if you're still working with that teacher. If you're in a club with them, or for some reason, maybe that's your like it's Gallagher and you're working through student council with that teacher, that kind of thing. You want it to be someone that you did well in their class and you got along with them well. You had a good personal relationship with them, to the extent that that is something that you had. You also want to be conscious of, if you're going to be applying for pre-med or bio, it would make more sense to have a science teacher write you a letter. But if you look at your science teachers and you think, I didn't really have a relationship, maybe I underachieved in science a little, which probably already doesn't bode well for going into pre-med, but that can kind of be the sorts of things that make you decide who you want to pick and who you don't. So once you've decided on that 1 or 2 teachers that you want to ask, ideally you want to ask them in person. If you're fully remote, then obviously that's going to be a little bit harder. In that case, you can reach out to them through Schoology or email, but you want to ask them politely, understanding that they may not, for a number of reasons. Never take that personally. You don't know what they have going on, or if they've already said yes to 50 people. So ask politely and just kind of explain to them what you're looking for. They're going to have different requirements. I have a packet that I have kids fill out. Some teachers want to see your transcript. Some want to sit down and have a conversation with you. It's all different, but you have to understand that anything they're asking for is to help them write a better letter for you. So if they give you something to fill out, don't just blow it off. Fill it out and fill it out well, because that can definitely be helpful. In Naviance, you can then, once you've talked to them in person and they're okay with writing it for you, then you have to go into Naviance and you have to actually invite them, and that allows them to fill out their letter and send it to us so we can send it into schools.
Do you want me to show that, or too much right now? Yeah, okay, so you're gonna go to the colleges I'm applying to section. And right here is a hyperlink for letters of recommendation. So you're gonna click on that. And you need to invite each teacher separately. So you'll add the request. You'll get a drop-down menu here. This is all of our teachers. You're gonna select the teacher that you asked. You're gonna click all current and future colleges. So then that way we can send the letter to any school that you apply to. In this little box right here, I usually tell my students just to say thank you for your time, or a nice little note, because they should know your great qualities, or they've asked you for something like Mr. Stager said already, so you don't really have to bother taking the time to fill that out. And then at the bottom, you're going to submit the request. That sends your teachers a link in an email. They're going to upload the letter, and then that's how we get it on our side of Naviance. The letter does not come to you, so you don't have to worry about it. Whether the teacher shows you the letter or not, typically they don't, but they're not going to take the time to write something bad, so don't worry. And then I don't know if I said this, you have to ask each teacher individually because it sends them an email.
Cool.
Yep.
And then ideally, you want to just send them a nice little thank you note, thank you email, singing telegram, just something, because it does take a decent amount of time to write these, and you just want to make sure you show your appreciation for it. Important part of this too. So I think we're kind of up against it here, and my throat hurts from all the talking, so I'm sure your ears do as well. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Erwin, Tiff, Faith, you want to mess with me a little more? Anybody else got anything they want to throw out there?
No, I think we're good, maybe.
Great.
See anything in the chat?
Nope. Cool. For any questions, come to us.